Okay, as Attorney Baird said, I'm Matt Tyszka. I'm a retired Lieutenant Colonel from the State Police. During my career, I did road patrol, barracks administration, I did supervision, narcotics task force, organized crime, intelligence, and I was the commander of the SWAT team for about 7 years. Called State Police Tactical Unit, but it's a SWAT team. So I think I've got a pretty varied overall experience in law enforcement. While I was Lieutenant Colonel at headquarters, I was in administrative supervision over the firearms licensing unit and the firearms training unit up in Simsbury, which means I didn't actually train and I didn't actually administer or issue pistol permits, but I supervised them, I discussed issues with them, resolved issues, and dealt with those issues on a one-to-one basis. So that's basically, a brief, general overall view of what I did. Let me just issue a little disclaimer here. Anything I say today is based on my experience and my opinions only. It does not reflect or on the Connecticut State Police, any other police department, or any other employers that I've worked for. Okay, so this is me talking, not to be attributed to another agency. Because quite frankly, there's a big difference in opinion among agencies, even within the state police, on how to administer these gun laws that have now crept up. As you were just told, an amicus brief or an amicus person is a friend of the court. That's what it means in Latin. Amici is plural, friends of the court. And what they do is try to help the court understand an issue on one side or another. Okay, both sides, or if there's 3 parties involved, each side could have an amicus based on permission of the court, based on their experience and qualifications. Okay, because you can't imagine that a judge knows everything about every subject. So if the judge is going to hear a case like this, there are many facets. There's legal, there's constitutional, there's mechanical, there's all kinds of facets to this. And what we do as police officers, we're trying to give the court a practical idea of how the law is enforced, how police officers view and have to deal with this law. I remember several times in my career I took constitutional and legal training from Arnold Markle, who's now deceased. He was the Chief State's Attorney in New Haven County, and he used to give a law enforcement course. And one of the things he kept repeating, he says, when you write your reports, when you do a case, you have to make the prosecutor and the judge see things through police-colored glasses. In other words, make them see it as you saw it at the time, that you're seeing it, and interpret it for them, because they have no idea what you talk about if you write them a lot of police jargon and things. So that's what we want to do here with this court, is make them see what we see and how we have to deal with a lot of issues on the street. Why we're meeting, okay? We believe in the Constitution, okay? And we're just representative of many, many police officers, not only in Connecticut, but around the country. There are sheriffs in other counties in the country that are suing the federal government, the same as we are, or they're just saying, we're not enforcing some of these new federal gun laws, some of the crazier ones. And people's opinion varies on whether that's proper or legal or not. But the fact is that, as Rachel said, police officers don't just think of society as us and them. There are some people, particularly police chiefs, I hate to say, but they're political animals for the most part. And they think that police officers and military should be the only ones to have guns. Well, we don't agree with that. We as police officers have been out on the street, we've encountered people with guns. If they have a permit, they're not doing anything wrong, they're fine. They pose no threat. It's the bad guys, the violent criminals who are armed, that pose the threat. And it's usually quickly determined on the street. So it's not like every time you see a cop, he's out to grab your gun. Sure, he may, if you're showing a gun, he may stop you, he may question you. You produce a pistol permit, verify it, check serial number on the gun, make sure it's not stolen, and then let you go on your way or do whatever business you have to do. Okay, that's the way it should happen. The problem in the past is that the police training on firearms up till recently has been very inconsistent and actually wrong. Okay, up to very recently, many people, most people in Connecticut, including most police officers, believe that you could not openly carry a firearm in Connecticut. That's wrong. Open carry is legal. Now, whether it's advisable or not is a whole different topic that we're not going to quite get into for many reasons. But the fact is that if you're wearing a concealed weapon and you bend over, your shirt slides up, and someone sees the butt of your gun, in today's society, you might expect someone to call the police. Hey, this guy's got a gun. Well, the police are going to respond, and that's the time when you have your interaction, and get the situation straightened out. People have been arrested for, breach of peace or disorderly conduct because they had a weapon on and it became visible. Well, there's no violation in the gun becoming visible. It's not the gun, it's how you use it under the circumstances. Okay, so it takes a little bit of discretion on your part, when you're carrying as far as what's going to do. But the fact is that the police have not been trained until recently that this is not a factor. You may have to respond, but it doesn't mean you have to make an arrest because someone has a gun. There's many people have guns. So what we want to do as a gatekeeper is we want to support the notion, for firearms rights, Second Amendment rights. You saw yesterday, we went over the Constitutional Article 1, Section 15. Well, the back of the handout I gave you is Vermont's statute. The language is the same, but how they treat it is 180 degrees opposite of how we treat it. Okay, Vermont says, here's your permit to carry right there, our Constitution and the Second Amendment of the United States. You don't need pistol permits. There's no restrictions for you carrying. If you screw up with the gun, then you go down. But carrying, open carry, there's no problem. In Connecticut, last I counted, I think there were 50 laws that made the penal code that mentioned guns of some sort or another, plus agency regulations. Okay. So with the same language, you've got two separate treatments by two different states. Come to your own conclusions. Second Amendment, Constitution, right to bear arms. We've had a body of law slowly developing since around 68, that I'll get to, that deals with the Second Amendment. What we haven't had any whole discussions on is the Ninth Amendment. Does anybody even know the Ninth Amendment exists? I guess you could come to that conclusion if you know there's a 14th. So something's got to be in. But, 10th Amendment, states' rights, has become an issue lately. But the Ninth Amendment is important. And the Ninth Amendment says the enumeration of the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. What that means is the framers of the Constitution recognized that they could not write a document that encompassed every human right, every fundamental right of human being, of free people. So they put that amendment in there to say that even if it's not mentioned in the Constitution, you still have that right. That doesn't mean your right is waived or that the government can usurp that right, can deprive you of that right, just because it's not in the Constitution. William Blackstone, okay, he has the quote there that I gave you. Okay? Self-defense is justly called the primary law of nature. And he's not the only one. There are many philosophers going back to, to the old Greek philosophers. Plato, Cato, Socrates. You have a right, a fundamental right as a human being to self-preservation, self-protection. Okay. How you do that is up to you. No one says you can only defend yourself with your fists, or you can only defend yourself with a knife or a gun. You have a choice. You're a free person. You have a choice how you're going to defend yourself. Obviously subject to reasonableness under any given law, but you still have that right. So if you put the Ninth Amendment together with the Connecticut Constitution, the Second Amendment, you have your fundamental right to self-protection. Okay, and that builds into this. Okay, obviously, for some reason, you don't need a permit to exercise your First Amendment rights, but you do for your Second. Figure that one out. And when we're talking about self-preservation, self-protection, you're your own first responder. When you are in trouble, you are being attacked, assaulted, whatever, you're in mortal danger. There's never going to be a police officer or anybody around to help. You heard the old expression, there's never a cop around when you need him. It's true. Very, very seldom. You have to take responsibility for yourself. You're your own first responder. Okay, if you can't take care of the problem, by the time the police get there, maybe not a problem to solve. The whole thing may be over. Okay, so just keep that in mind. And the other thing to keep in mind, in case nobody else covered it yesterday or today, is that the police have no duty to protect you. Okay, that shocks a lot of people. But there's long-standing case law, right, from the Supreme Court, that there is no duty for the government or police to protect you. You call 911, and they say they're sending a cop, and something happens, and the cop doesn't get there, or doesn't get there in time, you can sue the police department. You're not going to win.
Good luck, right?
Yeah.
I've tried it. It doesn't work.
No, it's long-standing law, unless there are some exceptions, unless you have a
There are some
relationship.
exceptions.
Yeah, but they don't have that duty. You know, they may feel bad, maybe they fire the officer that screwed up and didn't come. That doesn't help you if you're dead or seriously injured. Okay, so just keep that in mind. You know, you have to take some responsibility for your own self-protection. Okay, and how you do that is, again, up to you. Okay, we have Second Amendment rights, but there's no law that says you have to carry a gun or you have to carry a knife. Of course, there's regulations on knives too, lately. But if you want to, you should be able to. And with the law that they passed based on the Sandy Hook, the emotional appeal factor, they're restricting your right to protect yourself, especially in your home. Senator Whitcoast was here yesterday, and I understand he gave a fine presentation. I know him, he's a very good guy. When people pass laws, either in Congress or in the state, the legislature, Hartford, they do it in a sterile environment. And don't forget, everything that goes up to Congress or Hartford is political, purely political. That's all it is. So they go up there and in a sterile environment while they're having a brandy and smoking a cigar and chatting in the lounge. They craft these laws. Okay? And they sound great on paper. Okay? You may argue with that when you look at the tax code if you ever do. Books are about that law. But anyway, what's that?
Drinking in Bear's judgment.
Oh. But anyway, and often they do it with either one-sided input or in the case of this legislature, there's a lot of claims that they disregarded any testimony for the Second Amendment and just passed the law that they wanted to. There is evidence that the law they passed was sitting in a desk drawer somewhere just waiting for the right moment. They already had most of this written. So they do that in that environment, and they write the law, it sounds good, they thump their chest, and throw it at the cops, here, enforce it. And then the cops get it and say, the heck is this? How are we going to, what are we supposed to do? How are we going to enforce this? So what you have is when you have no one who knows what the law means, you've got a problem, and that's where it becomes 14th Amendment unconstitutional, because it's vague. Okay, you can't go, if you're on the street and you have a question, you can't call the legislature and say, hey, what did you mean by this? It doesn't work. Okay? The officer on the street has to interpret things, which is kind of a dangerous thing, because in essence, if he doesn't know what the law is, he's making it up as he goes along. And that's why we have constitutional laws, so that there's some consistency, some foreknowledge, so everybody knows what's a crime and what's not. Okay, you don't want to be left at the whim of somebody making up laws, you know, on the street. The laws that are passed, the gun laws, they're dealing with guns, okay? The police enforce against illegal behavior. That's illegal use of the firearm somewhere. You know, robbery, murder, assault, you know, whatever you do with a gun. Okay, we deal, you know, with it against behavior. Nowhere in the new law is there anything about mental illness. There's a short section at the end that deals with send up a task force to investigate mental illness. Well, gee whiz, who's been doing all the mass shootings, as comparatively few as they are? Who's been doing all this stuff? They're crazy. Yeah. So nobody wants to address this for a lot of reasons. You know, they don't want to stigmatize people, and it's hard to define and think about. And the legislature tends to avoid things that are hard to think about. So what do? They go to the guns. If somebody's crazy, they'll do you with a knife, machete, club, firearm. It doesn't matter. Okay? But nothing here addresses that, and we think that's a big deficiency, because it's not the guns, it's the people, it's behavior that causes our problems. Now, police officers, they want to do the right thing. They go to the academy and they're trained and they go out on the street. And for the most part, they want to do the right thing, but they can't do it if they don't know what the right thing is. Okay, that's what we talk about with these laws being vague, unconstitutionally vague. Police officers don't know what the law is. Then you don't know what the law is. Okay, so how do you resolve problems or questions? People go to the police all the time and ask their advice, you know, whether it's on cars or domestic violence or guns. The people who are supposedly the gurus of these guns, the special licensing firearms unit of the state police, they've given up answering questions. They can't tell you what a so-called assault rifle is. Please, none of the laws deal with assault rifles. Okay? They use the term, but it's totally wrong. An assault rifle has select fire, can use semi-automatic or fully automatic like a machine gun. Okay? What they're addressing in the law are semi-automatic firearms only, but they call them assault rifles as part of the political spin. But don't get caught up in that. They're not assault rifles. But the semi-automatic rifles, they'll bring them into special licensing of firearms and they'll say, we don't know. It may be, it may not be. They'll say, well, you can manufacture them, and then later we'll tell you, you know, when you're locked up and your guns are confiscated, we'll tell you if they're legal or not. That's no way to do business. You can't do that. It's unconstitutional. But this is what's going on. Now they've kind of given up even interpreting it. They just say, just do what you want, and if you're wrong, you know, we'll let you know. The problem, too, is because it's vague, you can go to any authority. You can go to, there's what, 19 state's attorneys in the state, or something like that? 19 GAs or something?
Well, yeah, there's 19 geographical areas.
Okay, plus the Part A's.
Right, exactly.
You can go to them and you're probably going to get 18 different answers. Well, that doesn't help you either. Because I'll guarantee you nobody's going to give you a decision on something in writing that you can show to an officer and say, hey, this is legal. You know? So you're caught in the hard place. And that's not a place where you want to be. Okay, even police officers. Police officers are subject to arrest for violations of these laws too. Okay, so it's not fair to anybody. Okay, the effect is if the police officers do something that's wrong, that's unconstitutional or illegal, everybody sues the police. They sue the police officer, the supervisors, the department, the city, state, you know, whatever, however far it goes up. Well, if you get enough of these suits where guys are making the same mistakes, what's going to happen is the department looks bad, the officer looks bad, the supervisors look bad, the cities can pay a tremendous amount of money in judgments on civil suits because of these mistakes. And instead of being reasonable and saying, listen, until this is finally interpreted and locked down, we're not going to enforce some of these things. We can't, because we can't afford it. Nobody knows what to do. We do one thing and it's wrong, we do another thing and it's wrong. and we're being held liable for both. Kind of an analogy is a lot of the things I did was human relations. And when you go to fire somebody, and believe it or not, you can't fire a state employee. Well, we did, we fired. It takes a little bit of work, it takes a little time, but you can't fire people. Well, in some cases, they've sued, they've gone to court, and the judge sitting up on the bench says, nope, plaintiff's right, you have to take them back. I think, God, it was a screw up. How can we take them back? Well, we have to take them back if they want to go back. So we take them back, they're doing the job, and they screw up again, and we get sued again by somebody that he harmed. We can't go into court and say, hey, Your Honor, we fired him once. Your colleague there, Judge so-and-so, ordered him back. They don't want to hear that. You're still liable because they figure you should have control of them, you should train them, supervise them. Even though you do it the best you can, you don't always win. So this is almost the same with the guns. You're caught in a catch-22 in a lot of cases, just because the laws are not clear. Okay, people who get arrested, of course, if you get arrested for anything, you have certain costs. And with guns, sometimes those costs are magnified. You get arrested, you're brought into the police station. You have to call an attorney. That costs money. You have to probably post bail. That costs money. Then you have to go to trial, and that costs money. And then even if you win, sometimes getting your firearms back is going to cost you more money if you can get them back. So there's costs on both sides, the police side and the citizen side when these things happen. Our goal, what we'd like to see as law enforcement, is prevent this stuff as much as we can. We don't want to get involved in this stuff. We want clear-cut things. And, when they come out with the wording in the statute saying they define these assault rifles, let's say, it's in the statute, and they say AR-15 and AR-15 type. You might as well throw up your hands, because people can't agree on what AR-15 type is. They say it can't have a bayonet lug on it. Does anybody know what a bayonet lug is? Okay, good,
Wow.
good. You guys are on. Okay. Does that make a gun any more deadly if you have a lug on it?
Only in trench warfare.
What's that?
Only in trench warfare.
Yes.
You can fix the bayonet.
Yep.
Other than that, no.
And that's your last line of defense. You don't want 6 bayonets. You got
Good
to
for
work.
crowd control too, unfortunately.
What's that?
It's good for crowd control overseas too.
It helps.
I used to use it.
Yeah.
They do not like knives.
Well, there's a downside too. It makes your weapon a little longer. But most of the people don't know how to
Stand up,
defend
yeah.
against it. Yeah, it's a stand-up. But anyway, it doesn't make the rifle any more deadly if you have a bayonet, or a flash hider, or a pistol grip on it. Like Attorney Stapleton said yesterday, it's a matter of chemistry, physics, and mass production. You can make, the technologies are out of that. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube, so to speak. People know how to make guns. There were gangs in Chicago, Yale Rukins, as a matter of fact, this is back in the 80s. They were making one-shot shotguns, and how they were making them was they'd take a shotgun shell and then roll it real tightly in a multi-layer newspaper. So newspaper's here, they put the shotgun shell here, and then they had a little device that had a little nail, like a striker. And they go down the street, they saw somebody they didn't like, whack it right on their leg, and fire. It was a one-shot shotgun. Okay, how are you going to regulate that? So people can do this. Back in the 20s and 30s, 40s, they had zip guns. Take car antennas, which I don't know if you know, but there used to be telescopic antennas, and the bottom parts used to be a little wider, and they got narrower as you went on. They used to take the bottom part and fit a .22 bullet in there, and then fashion a little gun and have a one-shot zip gun. So, these people that say, well, stop all the sales of weapons and stuff. The people who want guns and weapons are going to get them. Look at England. For years, the bobbies never carried guns. That was the society. They never carried guns, and people respected that. They didn't go around killing bobbies. Okay? Now, there's a good portion of the bobbies there that are armed. But they armed them after the strictest gun control almost in the world. They took away all the guns in England, and yet the bobbies now have to be armed. Does that tell you something? So, you know, look at this in a little bit of perspective when somebody comes to you and says, yeah, we'll get rid of all the guns. Isn't going to happen. I'm here to tell you. All right, so we already talked about Second Amendment, and there's millions of pages of court decisions on the First, Fourth, Fifth Amendment, maybe the 14th. You can find volumes, or if you look in you know, the law books, if you look under Second or First Amendments, you get pages of cites and footnotes. Second Amendment, there's just relatively little because it's relatively new. Okay, that's why we're coming up on this, and this has been a hot button issue for a lot of people because this is a new field of law that's being explored. Years and years ago, you could go out to Sears, you can go out to your local hardware store, and you could buy a gun, rifle or pistol, and ammunition. And farmers could go there and buy black powder, blasting caps, and time fuse right over the counter. It wasn't regulated because people generally didn't misuse that stuff. And when there was a misuse of firearms, they were charged with the crime, you know, either illegal possession or use of a firearm was what it usually was, or the crime that was being committed, armed robbery, whatever. Okay. Then in the 60s, what happened in 63? Yeah, Kennedy got whacked. Okay. JFK got whacked in 63. RFK got whacked in what, 67, 68? There. Well, right around there, people started, because this has been an issue that they've slowly tried to push on us to control guns, and control the population. And, you know, I'm not a conspiracy theorist or anything, but there has been a push in this direction. Well, those two assassinations pretty much sparked the Gun Control Act of 1968. And that was really the first law, federal law, that really went intricately into firearms. And there's evidence here, and you can look this up yourself, but there's strong evidence that people have come up with that Gun Control Act of 1968 was fashioned after the Gun Control Act of Nazi Germany in 1938. And the law was written in Congress by Senator Tom Dodd of Connecticut. Okay? Because he ordered the translation. He had a copy, he provided his own copy, because he was out in Nuremberg doing the Nazi trials. And he had his own copy of the Nazi gun law of 1938. He sent it to the Library of Congress, and he had it translated. And then miraculously, 4 months later, here comes our Gun Control Act of 68. And there's some things that are pretty close parallels. So you can make kind of a circumstantial connection or gut connection that that's where it came from. Regardless, that's when it started. And that's when guns and gun use actually was not only being treated as a criminal act if you used a gun, it was now getting political. Okay? To have a gun was political. To use a gun, it was political. Every time a gun was used, it called for more gun control, more gun control. And the gun control wasn't to control criminals, it was to take the guns out of the hands of ordinary citizens and stop the sale of guns.
Was the NFA in 1938, National Firearms Act?
There was one in 38, and then there was one in 68 as well. Okay, and then you get to around 1981, and you get the attempted assassination of President Ronald Reagan by another nutcase. Basically, Jody Foster told me or something. I think he's still, they're letting him out now
Are they?
on visits.
They have been for a while,
Yeah,
actually, yeah.
yes, but he was for a long time, he was incarcerated.
Right.
I think it was the old St. Elizabeth's Hospital, and then they closed that, down Morton, Virginia, and
Yeah.
something else. But anyway, once that started, then the push really came up, because every time one of these things happens, you know, the anti-gunners, yes. Okay, another one that we can use is screw the victims. One for our side, another arrow in our quiver that we can use to restrict guns. So this is, and in doing that, the gun laws that they're writing have become bigger and bigger, more complicated. And just kind of by definition, when the laws get big and complicated, they get almost incomprehensible. People don't know what they mean, or people get confused about what they mean. Sometimes they're internally inconsistent. One section will say one thing, another section will say something totally different. You know, and you just throw up your hands. But yet, they throw the law at the cops and you say, here, you out and enforce it and do it right. Nobody knows. That's the problem. The other problem we have is, if you've taken criminal law or anything, you realize that when you go to trial, when a state brings charges against you, they have the burden of proof. The state has to prove that you did X, Y, and Z, which were against each element of the statute. In other words, you committed the crime, you had the proper mental attitude, you did the required acts, and you are responsible. Okay? And that's the way it is. Again, the tax code, something different, and we'll get into that. Now it seems like it's switching around a little bit. They still have the burden of proof in proving you committed a crime where you illegally possessed a gun. You don't even have to commit a crime anymore with a gun. All you have to do is have one that they don't like, and you're guilty. And, you know, there's criminal ramifications to that. Fines, jail, of course your gun is confiscated. And they don't pay the value of the gun either, so keep that in mind. But now, to get it back, it's almost like you go back into court and you have to prove that you're entitled to get your firearm back. Now the burden of proof is on you. Not right. They have the proof. They have the burden of proof, or should have, to say why you shouldn't get the gun back, why you're not fit to have it. You shouldn't have to go in there, spend money, and prove to the state why you do it. That's one of the elements that was fought a while back with the Firearms Permit Review Board. In the past, the chiefs of police, when you applied for a permit, the chiefs of police used to have sole authority on whether to give you a local permit. If you didn't get a local district permit, you couldn't get a state permit. Okay, the local permit was a prerequisite to state permit. Well, a lot of the chiefs just said, not while I'm in town, nobody's getting a permit. The applications come in, they go in the round file. Well, we went through that whole process, and now first they ordered the chiefs, they had to issue absent circumstances or facts that would indicate that that person was unfit to have a permit. Now it's gone the other way, where the chiefs do, or the police departments, they do local background, and they put their stuff together. Then they have to send it up to state police licensing firearms. And they will again do another check and make sure everything is well. If there's no reason not to give you a permit, they have to give you a permit. Okay, and that's what they call the shall issue states. A lot of states around the country now have that. The law says you shall issue a permit to any applicant unless they meet certain criteria and they're clearly unfit to have it. But they have to be able to articulate that if they're challenged. So that's turned around. Okay? So, while we're talking about burden of proof, you heard yesterday, if you plead self-defense to a charge, okay, that's what does shift to you legally. Okay, the state proves their case, okay, and you admit you were there, you did the thing, you had the gun, whatever. Now, if you say self-defense, now you have to go and prove to the court that yes, you did all that, but it was justified under the law. And for whatever the circumstances are, you were in fear for your life, someone shot at you, broke into your home at night, you threatened your kids. you know, those were all justifications to make a shooting or a homicide legal. Like, you know, the state can kill people legally, you know, for death penalty. Well, you can kill people legally if you're justified under the circumstances. So, but it's for you to prove. The state's not going to try to exonerate you. What, as a practical matter, prosecutors, if it's a good, clean case, the prosecutor will not prosecute. You know, they'll do the investigation, make sure everything was clean, everything. They'll say, okay, you're done. Go on. We're not going to bother you. But you can't count on that. So just keep that in mind when we talk about burdens of proof, is that you may have to articulate exactly what you did, when you did it, why you did it. All right, what are our goals in this suit to get the injunction against the enforcement of the suit? We want to stop the enforcement of this whole law right now, before it even goes into effect, because most provisions are going into effect around January 1st. That's when you have to have all your registrations for your semi-automatic rifles in, and all your magazines. I don't know how you're going to register magazines, because they don't have numbers on them. Whatever. So we want to stop the enforcement now. We want to have the judge say, look, stay. No enforcement until this whole thing is litigated and settled. That's the best way to go about it. That way, the police aren't in the middle of this thing. You as citizens, if you want to lawfully carry a weapon, you're not in the middle of this thing. You can have your, you know, semi-automatic rifle and your large capacity magazines at home without fear of prosecution. Okay. We want to win this because we want to send a strong message to the legislature that you can't get away with this anymore. Okay. You're going to have to really be on your toes if you want to pass any more gun laws. Okay. They're going to have to be constitutional because we're watching. Okay. And like we won this case, we're going to win the next one unless you do it the right way. Since this is a nationwide issue, okay, affecting a lot of other states, we want to set a good precedent, a strong precedent, going through the appeals process of getting a law like this thrown out, because there are other states that have similar laws. I don't know if anybody knows it, but the first assault weapon law back in 1994, I think, that was pretty much copied after California passed their law. Okay, California passed their law. The legislature here took it, made a Xerox copy, and essentially just voted it into law. There were 2 guns on the list in that legislation that don't even exist. Okay. How they got in there, nobody knows, but they say it's against the law to have 2 guns that don't exist. It kind of shows you where they're at in the legislature. So we want to have the other states kind of look at us. Hopefully we'll be very successful, and they can model their litigation on what we're doing here. We want to provide a little leadership and a little roadmap. And the thing is, we want to make the laws comprehensible, legal, and equal for everybody. Okay? Under this law, police officers, corrections, I forgot who else, but there's a list of like agencies that are exempt from this law. If you're a policeman, you can buy one of the prohibited semi-automatic weapons. You can have and buy large capacity magazines. It's just after you retire, they will actually let you keep them as long as you register when you retire. You and I, if we have any, today we have to register them. And we cannot buy them in state or out of state. So we've got 2 classes of citizens here. Law enforcement and former law enforcement. And we've got all of us.
How's that constitutional?
It's not. You know, that's one of the reasons we're fighting it. Yeah, you have a dichotomy there that different classes of people are treated differently. And they recently had a California law that it was something like that. They allowed retired police officers to be able to buy semi-automatic weapons that were prohibited. And I guess the court, even the 9th Circuit, which is a big bad circuit, they shot that down, so you can't do that. So we want something you know, we want everybody to be equal. I mean, come on. We all have a right to carry a firearm. We all have a right to protect ourselves. And we all have a right to choose or not to choose. Okay, if you want to be a victim, have at it. Nobody's going to say anything. If you want to protect yourself, you shouldn't be prohibited because, as Blackstone said, it's a fundamental right.
Lieutenant Colonel Tyszka, have you had a chance to look at the new assault weapon definitions, that statute? Because you were talking about how confusing the laws are and how they need to be clear.
Well, I read it after they passed.
I have it up here, and I just wanted to show the students.
Oh yeah,
an
point
example.
out if there's.
It's kind of small. I'm going to go down through it, but basically, this is section 53-202A, which is the amended version since April 4th of this year of what an assault weapon is. And some people had a lot of these firearms before April 4th, and they were entirely legal. But since April 4th, they're not legal. But the law says that if you had them in your possession prior to April 4th, on or before April 4th, or you had ordered them and you were waiting for them to come for delivery, constructive possession, that you could still possess these firearms legally if you register them by January 1st, 2014. So there's kind of a look back period. If you didn't have these firearms by April 4th of this year, then it's illegal for you to get them, to have them transferred from somebody else, or to bring them into the state. And I brought this up because, like I said, I'm not an expert, like from academia or from a law school or anything like that. When an issue comes to me, I look at the law to see how it applies to my client, what I can do for my client. And so this law, when an issue comes to me, I look at the assault weapon ban now, and I try to figure out where my client's firearm fits within that, and whether it's now banned. But look at how confusing it is when you're trying to figure out. And this section maybe isn't as confusing because it actually lists the type of firearm, right?
Yeah.
Do you agree? Yeah. It actually lists the type.
A
So
lot of this, I think, was from 1994.
right, and a lot of it was already on the books. Okay, so if you can help me, and I'll go down a little further, you can kind of
Yeah, just go down just a little bit further. Section B, I think, is a good illustration.
Right.
Yeah.
You can actually zoom in at the bottom.
Can you? Okay, thanks a lot for that. Let me see how we do there. That's too much.
Good.
That's good. That's better, huh?
It turns into like almost a spreadsheet if you keep going down, because it'll say like
Yeah.
rifles with the following components, boom, boom, boom,
Well,
boom.
we'll work our way down. Okay, so this is section
All I
B.
just want to point out is here's an example. Any of the following specified semi-automatic center-fired rifles or copies or duplicates thereof with the capability of any such rifles that were in production prior to or on April 4th, 2013.
And the AR-15s,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
The AR-15, AK-47s are all in their Bushmaster, you know, from the...
Now, under A, those were already illegal.
Yeah.
I'll take it back up to A. They actually mentioned the AR-15 type somewhere here, right?
Probably, yeah, Colt AR-15 and Sport.
Right, and I did a case in Waterbury where, I mean, 7 or 8 years ago, where I tried to say the guy's AR-15 didn't fall within, it was an AR-15 made by Colt, but I tried to argue that because it doesn't specifically say AR-15 Sporter, that this did not apply. In other words, I said these give specific names for things, and because his wasn't specifically named, although it kind of was, because maybe you apply this to this, I know, you try whatever you can when there's 2 years mandatory jail time pending. And so I remember trying to argue that, but it seems like with this new law, they've kind of fixed that a little bit, where they've either named everything, or as we go further down, we're going to give characteristics of firearms.
Right.
Yeah, this is going to
Could
kill
you
us.
scroll down there and
Yeah, let me
get
see
to
what
that
I do.
spreadsheet part, because that'll show. But I mean, they list all this stuff.
Now, the spreadsheet that you're talking about, did you see that at the state police website?
That might.
It might have been that one, or after they put the amendments on.
This is the actual law, so it's not probably going to have that. But But talk a little bit, if you can, about section I, where it gives the different characteristics. In other words, here's where you have to kind of do a math game. It has to be this kind of rifle
Oh, I see.
that has the ability to accept a detachable magazine, and then has at least one of the following. And then you go down here, and if it has one of the following, then you have a problem.
Right, and that's what I was saying.
It's like a game, yeah.
See, in the 1994 law, you had to have two characteristics that would make it an quote unquote assault rifle. You had to have like a detachable magazine and a flash hider, or a flash hider and a bayonet lock, or whatever. Because now, they put detachable magazine and you can only have one more thing.
Right.
Floating or telescoping sight. How does that make that any more deadly?
What if I have an AR-15 with, you know, standard pistol grip as the weapon design?
Well, we're not going to answer
I
questions.
mean, just.
We're not going to answer technical questions like that.
You got a forward pistol
Yeah.
grip, you have this, they have, there is one, and I don't know exactly where it is in statute, but any pistol grip that extends more than 1 inch below
Right.
the receiver or the trigger or something.
Magazine that goes 1 inch below the bottom of the pistol, not pistol.
Right, okay, but they also.
It's like extended block mags, that's what they're trying to go for that.
Yeah, there was also.
And then it gets more complicated as you go down here. Semi-automatic pistol, detachable magazine, one of the following. So you really have to look and determine if the firearm that you have meets any of these qualities. And I like the comment you made about the telescopic stock. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, for anybody who doesn't know about rifles, you aim a rifle and you have the buttstock into your shoulder. Okay, different people, smaller, larger, they have a different eye relief to get the scope or the sights. Okay, and instead of moving your head every time so you get a consistent pattern, okay, you can adjust the pull or the length of the stock so that when you put it up, you're comfortable every time. It's just the right distance. Okay, that's basically what it's for.
So is it like a, I'm looking too. Is it like a car seat? You get into the car and you adjust the seat every time.
Yeah, slides back and forth.
And then when somebody else gets in, they adjust it for themselves.
So,
Okay. Let me show you a picture while we're on this
hopefully
subject.
that one. Basically, they put these features in there because they just don't like them. They say they look mean, they look nasty. They have no functional, effect on the operation of the firearm. The bullet shoots the same way every time. People, some of the criminals, they have sawed-off shotguns. You cut the stock off and they cut down the barrel. Still fires the same way, even if you have no stock on it.
So basically, it's just like a person that would just run over somebody, they could run them over either with a old beat-up Chevette, thus to a Maserati, pretty much.
Sure, exactly. Cars are cars. Yeah, I mean, an analogy, kind of, if you want, to a law like this is for all of a sudden the state to say, well, we have reason to believe that gray cars, because of visibility problems, they get into or cause more accidents, so we're going to outlaw gray cars. If you have a gray car now, you have 60 days to get rid of it, or you have to pay a special registration and you can never buy another one. Okay? Well, that may sound good on the surface, but what's your interpretation of gray? Dark gray, light gray, silver, medium, two-tone? Who knows? But that's kind of what we're after here. People they're throwing things in because they want to cover all the bases. Instead of saying, all guns are outlawed. Turn them in Connecticut, you can never buy them. They know that's not going to pass constitutional muster. So instead, they're trying to chip away at it by putting in every little thing they can think of to close you in and make it impossible for you to own anything but, possibly a bolt-action single-round hunting rifle. And then pretty soon those won't be good enough either. Those. You have the answer?
Yeah, it takes a while to warm up. I'll bring the picture.
Oh,
up in a
It
minute.
doesn't say you can't own a newspaper with a shotgun shell and a nail.
Yeah. Doesn't have to be efficient or look pretty. All it has to do is work. Right?